board. Keith
Drazik. Yeah, Drazik with VeriSign.
And Fenwick
Kelly.
McKelvey. Okay, I'm sorry for my pronunciation.
No.
This is going to be a very interesting panel because cybersecurity, right now we say I will save now, cybersecurity is a very big open thing. It has a big open space and people have different understanding about what cybersecurity is. I don't know if you noticed on Olivier's presentation. What? I'm sorry, I'm going to move this way because I'm talking this way. Now, where was the last thing that you heard? My name.
Good morning.
Okay. Well, anyhow, I was saying that today's panelists will talk about cybersecurity and how we safe now. That's the basic question. And cybersecurity, I was saying that has a different understanding from different people, and it's a big theme. So, in any case, today we have a big Becky Burr. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And Keith and Henry. And Becky is is actual board member in ICANN. Keith is from VeriSign, and he is the current chair of the GNSO in ICANN. And Fenwick is a professor here in Concordia University. So we have levels of different perspectives here. Becky can tell us more from the general perspective of ICANN, then we can go into Keith, talk about cybersecurity, and then we can talk from the academic side about cybersecurity. So please, if you have any questions, let me know. I will put a note on you here, and we will take the questions as we go. So, Becky, Keith, and Fenwick, can you have 1 minute for you to tell us, who are you? So we all know who are you.
Okay, my name's Becky Burr. I'm a member of the ICANN board. Some people would say that ICANN is all my fault. Sebastian, for example. I was the person at NTIA who signed the letter in 1998 recognizing ICANN and shepherding that process. Since that time, I've done a lot of work with registries and registrars, contracted parties. I served on the CCNSO, the Country Code Name Council, for 6 years or so, and now I'm on the ICANN board, and when I'm not doing ICANN stuff, I'm a data protection privacy lawyer in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Drazik. I am the Vice President of Public Policy and Government Relations at VeriSign. VeriSign is the registry operator for .com and .net, among some other TLDs, and we provide back-end registry services as well for some of the new GTLDs from the 2012 round. I'm also the current chair of the GNSO and the GNSO Council. For those that are not familiar, the GNSO is the policy-making body within ICANN that develops policy for the generic top-level domains, such as .com, .net, .org, as distinct from the country code names, the CCTLDs, such as .ca, .fr, .us, for example. Next year will be my 20th year working in the domain name industry. I've worked for registrars, multiple registries. I've been with VeriSign for about 9.5 years now. So I look forward to helping bring the perspective or the perspectives of the registry and registrar community to the discussions about cybersecurity, DNS abuse, DNS security threats. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Fenwick McKelvey. I'm an associate professor at Concordia University, and so this is quite honestly my first ICANN event. So very different perspective. I tend to do a lot of work in internet policy in Canada, so looking at a variety of interventions around network neutrality or issues around internet measurement. And in particular, we've just had an election in Canada, so I've been very preoccupied with a lot of security threats perceived around foreign interference in elections, so I think a bit higher up the stack. And I'm really kind of interested in trying to figure out the future of the variety of debates we have about internet policy, security, in kind of core infrastructure, as well as kind of the way that it's playing out on social media platforms. So I have lots of different perspectives in thinking through these multifaceted issues of internet security.
Thank you. So we're going to start with Becky. So Becky, you have a presentation. You want to?
I can just talk through it unless you think the presentation, the slides.
You can put the presentation together.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I'll try to run through them quickly.
Okay, and Becky is going to give us a picture from the ICANN perspective on cybersecurity, and then Keith from the registry perspective, and from the academic side. So, go ahead.
Okay, if we could go to the substantive slide. I'm going to start with the answer, are we safe now? The answer is no. Is anybody surprised to hear that? No. Okay, good. Now we can move on. The question from my perspective is, what is ICANN doing about it? What can ICANN do about it? What should ICANN be doing about it? So we have to always, with ICANN, start with its mission, because ICANN's mission is enumerated, which means we say what ICANN's mission is, that's what it is, it can't go beyond it, it can't do anything outside of it. So its mission generally is to ensure the stable and secure operation of the Internet's unique identifier systems, names, numbers, and protocols. And so cybersecurity, you would probably be right, that's a big part of the issue. With respect to, ICANN coordinates policy with respect to stability and security with respect to names, with respect to root servers, with respect to numbers and protocols. So I'm going to talk quickly about the way in which ICANN's mission is a little bit different in each of those cases. So with respect to names, ICANN's big job is to allocate and assign top-level domains. So in addition to .com and .net, there's now .club and .barclays and you name it, over 1,000 new top-level domains. That's one job. The other is to work with the community and to coordinate policy development that apply to registrations at the second level domains. And ICANN has pretty clear limits on what its authority is. It's to coordinate the development of policy where uniform or coordinated policies are necessary to facilitate openness, interoperability, resilience, security, and stability for the DNS. There's another little piece of this. Those policies that it develops must be developed through the bottom-up, multi-stakeholder, consensus-based process. So there's a sort of a substantive mission limitation. It has to be within this security, stability, and resiliency world, and you need to have there needs to be a need for coordinated policies, and you need the bottom-up multi-stakeholder process. There's some, with respect to names, stability, security, and resiliency means something a little bit different than you might find in the dictionary. It's a little bit broader. There's a thing in ICANN that we call the picket fence. A picket fence is just a fence with slats. Sorry, it's American. I don't know if it's Canadian as well. Things that are within that relate to security, stability of the registry databases, policies reasonably not necessary to implement other consensus policies, resolution of disputes regarding the registration of a name as opposed to the use of the name. So ICANN has a role with respect to trademark disputes, where somebody is registering a name in violation of somebody else's rights, but not with respect really to content in a domain. And then restrictions on cross-ownership. Can registries own registrars, vice versa? And if they do, what are the rules for that? There are some examples, and I like to put these up because, as I said, they don't quite match up with the dictionary definitions of stability, security, and resiliency. And although ICANN's mission with respect to names is limited, it's a little bit broader than you might think. So it does include principles for allocating names, first come, first serve, prohibitions on warehousing and speculating, reservation of names in order to avoid user confusion and protect IP, or secure technical management issues. maintenance and access to accurate and up-to-date information concerning registration, and then procedures to avoid disruption if a registry or a registrar goes out of business. You've got a name registered in whatever it is, and the registry operator for whatever it is suddenly ceases to resolve names, just goes out of business. Or you've registered a name with a registrar and they go out of business. What happens? How do you make the transition to another operator who will take care of it? ICANN also has authority, as I said, with respect to root servers. And in that case, we facilitate the coordination and operation and evolution of the DNS roots name server system. That's a very big priority for the ICANN board this year. We've had a good relationship with the root server community for many, many years, and we are all committed, particularly because of some cybersecurity reasons, to coming together and making that work better. With respect to IP numbers, ICANN really facilitates coordination and operation of the, that's the wrong thing there, but it's numbers, allocation of numbers. But in this regard, the regional address registries, like ERIN for North America, or RIPE NCC for Europe, or AFRINIC or LACNIC, those organizations are quite independent, and they have a lot to do with policy. ICANN really just helps facilitate that. And then with protocols, ICANN just works with the standards bodies to create registries of protocols. So in terms of the cybersecurity mission, ICANN works very closely with a root server system advisory committee, and that's made up of all of the operators of the 13 root servers that make up the root system. VeriSign operates a couple of them. There's one in Sweden, one in Japan, a bunch all over, and the root server system is designed to be redundant and to back each other up if there's an outage. So that's one group that we work with very closely. And then ICANN has a Stability and Security Advisory Committee, and the SSAC consists of experts in security, DNS security and stability. They're invited to serve on the SSAC, and they advise ICANN and the community and the board on matters relating to security and integrity of DNS. They do ongoing threat assessments and risk analysis, and they've done work on any number of things. They've looked at some of the cybersecurity issues. Clearly, they've looked at name collision. They've looked at enormous. They are always writing papers and providing advice with respect to security, cybersecurity, and ICANN. ICANN's adopted a strategic plan for 21-25 through 2025, and one of the strategic objectives in this plan is to strengthen the security of the domain name system and the DNS root server system. We have 5 sections of our strategic plan. Security is one, very, very important and close to the top of the list. With respect to the objectives, we have some goals. We want to improve the shared responsibility for upholding security and stability of the DNS by strengthening coordination in partnership with relevant stakeholders. So one thing to know is ICANN doesn't have independent authority, the ability to go it alone in this place. We need to work with the ITF. We need to work with the IAB. We need to work with the W3C, with the ITU, with a bunch of different standards organizations and industry groups, cybersecurity research groups, to work on this together. Very important for us this year is strengthening DNS root server operation governance in coordination with the root servers. So the root server system, this is a critical piece of the system. They're independent operators and they're largely self-funded. So we're very lucky to have volunteers like VeriSign who spend a lot of money placing redundant multicast nodes all around the world to make sure that you can get to where you need to be on the internet. We have, but all of the root server operators are volunteers. And some of them are, there is some prestige maybe that comes along with it, but it does cost money to do this, and particularly for security purposes, there are very important differences in resources and the ability of the operators to get lots of redundant servers out there to ensure that the system can respond, for example, to a DDoS attack on the root server system. That's a real concern, and some of the root server operators are putting a lot of resources into it, and some of them don't have the resources to do it. So one of the things that we really need to do this year is work more closely with the root server community to make sure that the resources are there so that, for example, the system can withstand a concentrated DDoS attack, which is something that we worry about. Also, identifying and mitigating security threats to the DNS through greater engagement with relevant hardware, software, and service vendors. We talked about, I heard you guys talking about universal resolution. That's one of the things that is critically important when you're working with the hardware manufacturers and the software providers as well. And then increasing the robustness of the root zone key signing and distribution service and processing. Key signing is a process that is intended to make the DNS more secure. It depends on everybody signing, and so there's a lot of work to be done to bring everybody along in getting signing. But this year, for example, we had a big exercise in rolling over the key that had been in place, I think, for about 5 years. So I can tell you there were a few anxious people waiting for this rollover to take place, which fortunately went without a hitch. So that's really, I just wanted to set the scene. ICANN has a very important role to play. It's limited in some cases by its mission, and ICANN is not alone in this. It takes a global village when it comes to DNS security.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for that overview. And Keith, tell us about views in the register area.
Sure.
What's happening there?
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. So again, and thanks to Becky for that setup. And I think one of the key things that I want to take from her comments is that ICANN's mission and bylaws are very limited, and limited in terms of the area in which ICANN can engage and can work to develop policies around things such as DNS abuse. So as we head into the ICANN 66 meeting here in Montreal this week, one of the big topics of discussion is going to be DNS abuse or DNS security threats. And I think it's important to draw the distinction, as the bylaws do, between the differences between what we would consider DNS infrastructure abuse and web content abuse, or the security threats that come from abuse of the DNS infrastructure itself, and then what falls into the areas related to content. ICANN's bylaws are quite clear that ICANN does not have a role in sort of adjudicating or engaging in matters related to content. So the conversations this week, I think, are going to be very important in helping the ICANN community come together to try to better understand what's possible within ICANN's remit, what might fall outside ICANN's remit, and where is their engagement necessary with other groups to carry that conversation forward. I should also note, from a registry and a registrar perspective, registries and registrars that operate in the generic top-level domain space, the GTLDs, again, com, net, org, biz, and all of the new GTLDs, as distinct from the country codes, the GTLDs have contracts with ICANN, and there are provisions within those contracts that where registries and registrars, collectively known as the contracted parties in the GTLD space, have taken on obligations and have taken on things that need to be done largely related to DNS infrastructure abuse. The question now is, will those same obligations or best practices be extended to the CCTLD space? In the ICANN space, there's no contract between CCTLDs and ICANN. So there's no way for ICANN to impose new obligations on the country code top-level domain operators. And they constitute approximately 45% of the global marketplace in terms of all second-level domain names that are in use out there. So I think as we start talking about best practices and we start talking about what more can the ICANN community and contracted parties do to police and to try to mitigate DNS security threats, I think it's a legitimate question, is how do we make sure that we bring the entire registry and registrar community forward? But that's not to say that more couldn't be done and shouldn't be done as it relates to identifying better ways to engage in trying to mitigate DNS security threats. And I think the ICANN community, through ICANN's processes, have a role, and that these conversations that will start in earnest this week here in Montreal, I think will be a very important first step in bringing the community together to try to establish some common understanding or a starting point for the conversations that will continue. I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm actually really interested in hearing something not related to ICANN.
Well, I do have a question, but I'm going to ask the questions. Can we